You're listening to Coupled With, the podcast that helps you take the guesswork out of feeling seen, heard, and valued in your relationship. If you've ever felt stuck in the same arguments, struggled to stay connected, or wondered how to better communicate with your partner, you're in the right place. I'm Dr. Rachel Orleck, a couples therapist and coach, and together, we're going to make relationships make sense. Let's dive in. Infertility can be one of the most isolating experiences a couple can go through. And yet, it's something that affects so many relationships. The emotional weight, the decisions, the uncertainty, it can feel like you and your partner are on completely separate tracks instead of working through it together. And this is really a topic that is near and dear to me because before conceiving my son, I went through 2 years of intense infertility treatments. I know firsthand how overwhelming and exhausting this journey can be, not just physically, but emotionally and relationally in ways that are hard to even put into words. That's why I'm so excited today for our conversation with Alicia Ferris, a reproductive and perinatal therapist. We'll dive into the emotional impact of infertility, how to stay connected through the stress, and small but powerful ways to support each other throughout this journey. If you or someone you love is facing infertility, then this conversation is for you. Let's get into it. So, thank you so much, Alicia, for coming on to the show today. We have a really great topic about teaming up as a couple around infertility and as you're going through infertility treatments. And what do you think are really the barriers that couples have to working as a team during this time?
Good question. I think in terms of why there's often a disconnect there, it tends to be around the fact that these are experiences that we're going through together, meaning we're both going through it. But because the experience of each partner is so different in that process, it almost feels like we're on parallel tracks instead of on the same track together. And that happens for a whole host of reasons, not the least of which being that the pregnancy tends to take place in one person, or sometimes diagnostic testing will show that there's, some interventions that need to be done to increase fertility in one person over the other. And so, just even the medical care component of it is a very different experience. Sometimes the desire to get pregnant and conceive is also a little bit different. If they're both on the same page with wanting to conceive, but once they start to run into barriers to that, maybe they differ a little in how badly they want that and how much, they are ready to go through in order to get that outcome. So there's a whole lot of things like that can create some separate experiences. And then, of course, the impact of going through infertility itself and how it impacts finances and impacts, your sex life and impacts your social life and just all of those things, um, also tends to create some divide, in the partnership.
When there is that kind of a divide, what are some of the consequences down the line as they're continuing through the infertility journey, through pregnancy, or even as parents?
Yeah. I think one of the big things people worry about is divorce. Like how much is this stretching our relationship or severing, creating fractures in our relationship? And, what the research says on it is that no, it doesn't necessarily lead towards divorce, but it is a pivotal moment, meaning because it's such a significant impact on the relationship, couples either start to have those fractures and some impairment in the relationship because of the fertility experience, or because of some of the adversity, it brings them together and they're drawn closer and the relationship and the foundation is actually built up and strengthened. So yeah, it affects that union, but how it affects it really depends on how you choose to navigate it. And then the other component is around kind of loss and experiences of trauma and things like that, which is why I work with couples on like birth trauma prevention. Prior to even, like towards the end of that third trimester, and like setting them up for success in the postpartum period. Because a lot of those factors we talked about that make people be on parallel tracks of different experiences, that can happen too with birth, pregnancy, postpartum, parenting, all of those pieces.
Yeah, whenever there's that pivotal moment, there's the potential to split in terms of how you're working together or how connected you feel or how much you feel like you're getting your needs met.
That's
Is
right.
yeah. So you work with couples or individuals or both around these issues?
Both. I primarily see individuals, and then I'll bring their partner in for maybe 1 or 2 sessions during the fertility journey. Usually, also, then again, towards the end of the pregnancy, or if there's a loss, we'll do some processing together around that. And then, supporting them through postpartum, that phase as well. So I do that. Some couples come in as a couple, meaning there's already some fracturing going on there in their dynamic, or they're coming up to a decision that they need to make together about their fertility journey, or about their pregnancy. Um, and they want some guidance and support in making those decisions together.
What are you looking at when you're trying to help a couple or an individual of a couple stay connected with their partner?
I think the biggest piece is the communication about the emotional experience. And this goes to, one of the best practices right now in couples therapy of emotion focused therapy. Sometimes we talk about a problem or a challenge that we're facing, and we talk so much about this subject that we're missing the underlying emotions there that we're feeling about that subject. And if we can connect around what those emotions are, usually makes the whole conversation about the subject matter so much easier. So it's usually about helping couples feel heard, understood, and loved and seen for the experience they're having their partner learn how to do that for them. Because usually there's a lot of effort to support each other, but it may not be hitting the mark.
Yeah, I see that too, where there's so much that they're each trying to do to be connected, but they're
Mhm.
not necessarily connecting on those points, and they actually end up pushing each other a little further away as they're going through that.
That's
S-
right. Yeah.
So, can you speak a little bit more to how you help or what you would suggest for the couples to do to go deeper, to feel more connected?
Yeah. So I think one of the big things is for the cycles, right? The roller coaster that we tend to be on with every cycle of hoping for a positive pregnancy test, hoping that intervention was effective. Um, that roller coaster of getting your hopes up and then having them dashed and then getting your hopes up and then, if you can feel like you're riding that roller coaster together as opposed to one person paying more attention to that than the other. I think that that is a very simple, like low hanging fruit kind of way. So that one antidote to that is being able to have a shared calendar around the fertility cycles and fertility treatments and what the medication regimen is and just all of the when the appointments are, so that one person isn't doing the mental and emotional load of holding all of that by themselves and just waiting for the other person to ask, or just always giving the information but not feeling like it's being cared about or inquired about. So if there's an investment in that where that's shared information across the board, then it feels like you're sharing the experience a little bit more. So there's a whole bunch of those kinds of things that I work with clients to be able to implement small things, even like being able to know when that fertility window is. So separate from, advanced reproductive technology and going to a fertility clinic for all those interventions, like even when you're just trying to conceive naturally, for that, and it's usually the woman tracking her cycles and knowing when her fertility window is and peeing on a stick to try and figure all of this out and taking her temperature and just all of these things. If he can be more a part of that and be tracking it himself as well, the partner, or if, don't want to assume gender here, if their partner, regardless of how active of a role they are taking sexually in the process, even if, they're just tracking what those timelines are, that can be incredibly supportive. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Ava bracelet or other fertility monitors like that.
Sure.
So it's got an app that's attached to it that you can have your partner sign up for, so they can see on their own phone, on their own calendar, like, oh, this is what's taking place, oh, this is my open window. And like maybe even making it feel a little bit more natural instead of saying, oh, you're fertile right now, let's have sex, right? Because that tends to get that intimate connection turning into a business agreement of like reaching goals together. So, both people being in the know can make it feel a little bit more spontaneous or have a little more buildup, especially for a woman that might need more mental and emotional buildup for intercourse, to not just have to be like, oh, bam, this is now, we need to do it now. This is our only window, that kind of thing.
Yeah, there's so much pressure around that window and getting it right.
That's right. Yeah. And it's an impact, for both people. I hear a lot about, the desire going down there because it becomes a performance kind of thing or a transactional kind of thing. Um, so the other piece is, looking at how it's affecting your sex life and addressing some of those more directly. Like maybe we need to be looking at being a little bit closer when we're not fertile, so that
Mhm.
we've got this offset and we're not just focused on sex when there's a goal associated with it. Or maybe we're not even having sex, we're just doing other forms of intimacy on a more regular basis, that have nothing to do with making a baby.
Yes. Intimacy is something that's really impacted during that time, no matter if you're trying for natural conception or the advanced reproductive technologies. There's such a huge impact there, and that's where a lot of people feel connected to their partner, feel sometimes most connected.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think the other piece is that fertility makes people kind of hold their breath and stop their life for however long you're going through that. It's difficult to plan our next trip if we think that we might be pregnant then, or do we RSVP for this wedding or not? I don't know that I could make it or travel, or even the pieces around, not wanting to go to baby showers or not wanting to go to social events because of people asking, and those awkward conversations about,
Mm.
are you going to have a kid? When are you going to start trying? And, those kinds of things. And so one thing that I talk with both individual clients and couples around is, how can we support each other in being able to continue to live life and stay present with the life we have right now while planning for a future one, but not holding our breath for that because we don't know when that's going to be or what that's going to look like. All we've got is right now. So maybe we do some more together. Maybe we get out and we plan more together, or we get out and socialize maybe in different ways. And I really encourage couples to look at this as borrowed time.
Sure.
Because truly, if you want to be a mama, chances are you will find a way. And if that way doesn't work for you, then you'll come to terms with that at that moment. But, chances are, as long as you want to be a mama, you will find a way to make that work. So that means that right now is borrowed time. This is a time when you're still single and you get to just grab your keys and walk out the door anytime you want to, and you don't have to think about packing a bag or pumped milk or anything like that. You can take those vacations together that are vacations instead of what I talk with parents about afterwards is think about it as an extended field trip with the children instead of vacation. It'll probably go better for your mindset. So what can we do now to really take advantage of this waiting time as opposed to just holding our breath and watching everybody else carry out the lives we thought we were going to have right now?
Yeah, I love that. That was definitely something I had a hard time doing when I
Mhm.
went through my journey. And if there is one suggestion that everyone listening to this can take, it is don't stop living your life because once you have kids, it's so much different.
That's right.
What about for the couples who maybe there is that discrepancy in how much they want to go through infertility treatments or how
Mhm.
much they believe that that's going to be the way that they get their child? And
Mhm.
so there's naturally one person doing more of the research or one person going to the clinics and making the appointment more than the other person.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, at the beginning there, you talked about what if we don't want to do this, meaning there's some kind of decision that you may not be on the same page with or aligned on. And I think that's a key piece in working with couples around fertility. There's so many decisions and a lot of micro decisions and then major decisions you weren't expecting to have to make. And all of those things that somehow we've got to get all the information so that it's informed and then both people have to share that information, so that you're coming from the same place, at least, foundationally and understanding what's in front of you. And then you've got to balance out, your different emotional responses and needs and dreams and goals and all of those things. And there can be some decision fatigue associated with this journey too. Um, I definitely was there myself. And so I give couples some structure to be able to have those conversations together. And there's a whole lot to that. But one kind of little hack for your listeners is to do a ruler test with each other, just anticipating what might be in the comfort zone of next steps for your partner is incredibly helpful in reducing the pressure of whatever you're trying to do right now. So if you're doing an IUI right now and you're not sure if your partner would be willing to do to IVF if this series of IUIs doesn't work, it puts so much more pressure on that IUI, which is hard because IUIs don't have a great success rate, right? So just even, and while we don't want to think that this intervention isn't going to work, just having the conversation of like, well, where I'm at right now is if this doesn't work, I think I might want to do this. I'm not sure if I'd want to do this. These are reasons why I would or wouldn't. And just starting to kind of feel each other out with those conversations beforehand usually creates a lot of relief because there's some fears that you won't be on the same page. And the more you talk about it, the more there's a comfort level built up there that you might actually be on the same page and there might be support. So we don't need to feel like we have all our eggs in one basket, no pun intended,
Sure.
with this one particular medical intervention around fertility. And if you're in different places, again, that's, where counseling can come in and really help you talk through aspects of that. But if you at least are open to talking about it, definitely understand that where you're at with something now might change. I know that I definitely wasn't ready to use anything but my own eggs at first. I had to go through and see those not work. But I knew for sure that I would rather do an intervention that would carry a pregnancy, like doing, egg donation or embryo donation, than over adoption because I so wanted that pregnancy experience and the attachment and all of those pieces that come with being able to birth your child. So being able to kind of talk through that helped. And then you can do the ruler test, which is on a scale of like 1 to 5, 1 being I wouldn't want to do that intervention at all. 5 being, yep, if this doesn't work, I'm fully on board with that. If this doesn't work, I'm fully on board with that one. Where are you at in that 1 to 5 scale and why? And so just naming the number can bring your own mindfulness and awareness in your process of kind of letting go of some of how we thought things were going to happen. Um,
Yeah.
versus how we want them to happen and moving forward given our current reality, all of those things. And it can help communicate to your partner where you're at and why. So you end up making these decisions in a much more aligned way with a lot more understanding of why you might be in different places. And then just having the discussion and holding space for each other around that can really kind of shift people's willingness to do one thing or another, or come to some kind of compromise with their partner on the issue.
Yeah, really coming to a place where they understand what the concerns are or the fears of doing it or not doing it can depersonalize it from you're preventing me from doing this next step
Yeah.
to okay, what are the concerns coming up? Is this something that we can work on together to get to that next step? Or is there a reason that I'm not thinking of that maybe we should end it here?
Mhm. That's right. Yeah.
When do you recommend couples counseling versus individual counseling and then bringing the partner in for a few sessions?
Mm. It really varies. When I usually do those, 15-minute consultations with new clients, and we kind of feel it out in that conversation, whether it's good to start as an individual or as a couple. Um, if someone already has an established therapist and they're the primary partner that has, more significant emotional impact of the fertility, usually that tends to be the female in the process, simply for biological reasons of how much they're having to deal with physically. Then and what they're worried about more is the dynamic of the relationship. Then I would say, yeah, well, we can do this as a couple. If they come in and they say, I'm worried about the relationship, and they don't feel like they have adequate or specialized support for the journey they're going through personally, I usually encourage it be individual with their partner coming in for specific sessions. Usually the ones up front are around, how do we support each other and hold space for each other as we're going through this. So getting some tools on board around, communication and making sure that they feel seen and heard and understood and loved. Um, and then kind of going through various other sessions like decision making around fertility treatments or processing of previous pregnancy losses, or talking about the impact on their sex life or the stressors of the financial situation. Those are all usually things that can be done with a partner simply coming into session. And that's because as a couples counselor, your client is the couple, it's the relationship, right? It's not either person individually. So unless the relationship is the primary concern, then it's not always necessary to go there, right? If we can adequately support one of the individuals and bring the partner in for a session here and there, sometimes that's all that's needed. I think it very much depends kind of how the relationship is doing in the process,
Yeah,
or not there's support in place.
that makes a lot of sense. There's so many things that are happening at the same time that if that individual is needing to process what's going on and needing to understand where they are, and then there's these little misses that are happening with their partner, bringing them in to work on that in the service of helping your individual client move forward with a close connected relationship as opposed to we're really struggling in this process and we need to come together and work on this together.
And some of that has to do with who the individual therapist is too. Like if they have an individual therapist established, but that individual therapist doesn't do couples or has that level of comfort or doesn't, really know how to support the couple in the fertility journey, then, it might not be the best to have them brought into those sessions. So it really depends on kind of a little bit about who you're with. But I think it's always worth having a discussion with your individual therapist. Either way, I think being able to do a couple session or bring your partner in is so critical, um, to making sure that everyone feels supported through the process, that we're proactively addressing some of the things that are the ramifications of a journey through infertility on the relationship. And then setting you up for success for pregnancy, postpartum, parenting, all of those pieces. Not to mention the fact that usually, there is one partner that's typically not going to counseling, and not to stereotype, but to recognize patterns. Men tend to engage in therapy at a much lower scale, than women do. And so sometimes them coming into a session or doing couples counseling might be the only support they're individually getting. And they
That's
might
a
not
really good point.
a lot of support from their peers either, because guys often are not talking about some of those more intimate or private things, or there's some stigma associated with not being successful in producing offspring. So there's just a whole lot wrapped up into that, to where the men are often having these experiences completely unsupported.
Which doesn't mean they're not going through some emotional turmoil about it. They just don't have anyone to talk to about it.
Exactly. Well, and in the society we're in now, we have not done a good job of raising our boys to help them see that those emotions are valid and that they deserve, to be heard and supported. And um, so, yeah, there's some stigma, some serious stigma there with counseling in general, let
Not
alone.
to mention the added layer of infertility.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
Think one piece we haven't talked about yet that would be really helpful is from day one, in which, the couple recognizes, hey, like, we've been trying for a while, this doesn't seem successful. Should we do something? Should we figure out what's going on? If you can start as a couple to go through that process from day one, meaning both of you are going in for diagnostic testing, both of you are making changes in your diet and your toxin exposure and, alcohol, substance use, all of those things to increase fertility. If you are doing it together from the get-go, it can really help. Oftentimes what I see is that there starts to be some problems, and then the female in that partnership will be the one that's going in and getting all this testing done, and then she's researching fertility clinics, and she's looking at how she can increase her fertility, and she's kind of frantically doing all these things to make this successful. And her partner isn't doing any of those things or minimally. And so it can get you off on very separate tracks right at the beginning. So
Sure.
the extent to which you're fully engaged with each other and kind of jointly making sacrifices, um, and looking at as a this is there are two things needed for this embryo to be developed, right? It does not just come from the egg. It is not just about the state of the womb. Like, this sperm matters, and we treat it as something that really matters. That can be a game changer too.
Yeah. In this scenario, we're talking about the female partner, but really there can be one person in the partnership is really having the panic about not being able to conceive, and they kind of become the driving force. And over time, if you're not working as a partnership, there can be resentment that builds up or fatigue that builds up on one side. And it
Mhm,
doesn't mean that the other person doesn't want to have a child or isn't as invested,
mhm.
but there's that disconnect somewhere, either around knowledge of what to do, or they're just not feeling the panic as intensely. And that can be really difficult when you're creating a narrative about what's going on with your partner and you're not talking to them.
Ironically, I see in same-sex couples, whether it's male or female, there tends to be more immediate support there. It doesn't feel like such a separate track. It's usually in heterosexual couples where you see that divide, um, for a whole host of reasons, but being able to proactively address it, I think really helps. And typically the partner is like, yeah, tell me what you need me to do. I want you to be specific. What do you need? What does it look like? How do I carry this out so that the problem is fixed, right?
How
Uh,
do we operationalize this problem?
yes, yes. So if you can give them a map, if you can give them tools, usually I've never had a case where the response has been, yeah, no, I'm not really into that. Like, you're on your own here. Like, that's just not. They're like, thank you. I needed something. She was starting to freak out and I wanted to fix it. Like, how do I make it better? And even as tangible as how to be able to talk to each other about things that are, hard and emotional.
Sure. I wonder if part of what you've seen in same sex versus heterosexual couples is that you go into the conception process knowing that you're going to need some assistance with the conception
Mm,
because you're missing one part of that formula.
that could be. That could. Well, and usually with the heterosexual couples, at least initially, unless there's some significant diagnoses there, you're not using gametes, right? You're not using donor egg or sperm. And so one partner already feels like they are a part of it, as opposed to with same-sex couples, if they're using their own egg or sperm, it's usually only one partner doing that. So the other partner wants to be actively engaged so that it feels like they're building this family together. So yeah, for a whole host of reasons, it tends to look and feel a little bit different, but there's a lot of, things that are very common across the board in these experiences as well.
Absolutely. These are such really important points for our listeners to be thinking about of how can you show your partner that you're in it with them and how can you also ask your partner to join you if you feel like you're the one who might be putting in a little bit more of that effort right now, really slowing down and doing that ruler test, seeing where they are and what they might need to feel more joined up with you as well.
Yeah, and not for this episode, but the same on pregnancy loss. That's a
Yeah.
whole thing as well as keeping the relationship intact there and how to heal together
Mhm.
instead of separately, and how to support each other through that whole process as well, so that it's not coming out in different ways at different times in the relationship and family.
Absolutely. Such a good point. As we're getting ready to wrap up here today, is there anything that we haven't touched on that you would feel is important for people to know?
I think the biggest thing is that what I hear the most from all of my clients is how alone they feel going through infertility. I mean, across the board, that's what I hear the most.
Yeah.
And you've got a built-in support person there. And just because it doesn't feel like that's working for you right now doesn't mean that it can't be leveraged to be able to support you a little better with what you're going through. And there are tools and resources and people like you and I that are out there to help people through this journey and help, keep those relationships intact and even get stronger through this process. So
Yeah.
really hope that people reach out for that support and know that they deserve it and that it doesn't have to be this hard.
Yeah. The more that they're able to leverage their relationship and feel like they're on the same page and on the same team, that'll only serve to their benefit as they get to the point that they're pregnant or get to the point that they have their baby and are in parenting and sleep deprived and all the things that come along with that.
Yes, all the things. This is just the start of a process that needs teaming all the way along through.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing this knowledge with us. If people wanted to reach out to you, how might they do that?
Yeah, they can just Google me, Alicia Ferris. They can jump on my website, simplejoycounseling.com, and then just make an appointment right there on my calendar, sign up for 10-15 minute consultation, and we can talk about how I might be able to support them on their journey.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And thank you for letting us know how we can support your practice and how you can support the people listening to the show.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate being on here, and thanks so much for the work you're doing because this just really needs more visibility for sure. So I love that.
I appreciate that. Thank you. There was so much wisdom in that conversation with Alicia, and I hope you're walking away with some insights and tools to feel more connected in this process. The biggest thing that I took away was really making sure that you're getting on the same page ahead of time and really sharing your feelings, not just trying to have a game plan, but really taking the time to understand each other's emotions so that you can feel loved, seen, and valued. If infertility has made you and your partner feel more like opponents than teammates, remember, there are ways to shift that dynamic and come through it stronger together. If today's episode resonated with you, please share it with someone who might need to hear it. And if you want to take these conversations to a deeper level, you can check out Alicia's work at simplejoycounseling.com, and I'll link everything in the show notes. Thanks for spending this time with me, and please stick around for a few final thoughts. If you've been nodding along during this episode thinking, this is exactly what happens in my relationship, but I don't know how to stop it, I made something for you. It's a free 7-day email course called Break the Cycle. Each day, I'll walk you through simple steps to stop the same fight from repeating and start rebuilding real connection without shutting down, walking on eggshells, or trying to do it all perfectly. You can sign up at my website. I'll link it in the show notes. It's totally free. This isn't just about communication. It's about breaking patterns that are breaking you. That's it for today's episode of Coupled With. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. If this episode resonated with you, I'd love for you to hit subscribe so you never miss what's next. And if you found it helpful, please share it with a friend or leave a quick rating and review. It really helps more than you know. And if you're curious about how we might work together or want more resources to strengthen your relationship, head over to my website, www.drrachelorleck.com. You'll find free tools, podcast extras, and ways to go deeper. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next time.